I wanted to talk to him about a little post he wrote recently about Geno Smith, and then I was thinking, oh, it's July, 3 weeks away from training camp. Let's check in with our good buddy who joins us during the football season, Rob Staton from SeahawksDraftBlog.com. All right, I'm going to close my eyes. Seahawks gear, no beard. Son of a God, he's got it all on. He's got Seahawks, he's got Mariners, still has the beard. How has your summer been, sir?
Very busy, yes. We have a lot of nonsense going on in the sports scene over here. So I've been having to cover that. So yeah, it's been eventful. And I'm flying to Spain next week to go and cover one of the other teams, which sounds delightful, but it'll be a lot of work. So so very busy time, very busy.
And you got the kids. And now you got to arrange. The summer is worse than school year. Because the summer, you got to arrange all these camps and everything for them.
Yep. So they're going on a camp. So they finish school in two weeks, I think it is, 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh my God, they're still in school?
Yeah, they're still in school till late July, and then they're off until September. And yes, we do all that stuff with the camps and making sure there's people to look after them and all of that. Yeah.
When do they go back to school? Like what?
First week in September, I think it is. I think it's like I don't know what day that is, like the 3rd or something, is it? I think.
They don't really have much of a summer break, do they?
No, they have 6 weeks. They have 6 weeks off from July to the end of July till September. And then when they go back, I'll be flying to Seattle for the first game of the season. So
this is going to be what a treat. Solo?
Yes. Oh yeah, I can't bring them with me because one. They'll well, they have to start school.
How about your beautiful bride? Maybe she wants to leave the kids.
Yeah, well, she probably would do, but no, we did go away once without the kids, and she spent the whole time missing the kids. So she probably wouldn't want to do that, especially because I'm gonna go to the Seahawks game. I need to decide whether to go and take in some college football. The Huskies are playing on Saturday, but they're only playing. Okay. They're only playing. I can't remember the team they're playing, but it's one of those. It's like UC Davis or something like that. So
sure. Yeah. Well,
not really feeling.
Be
that.
Over by half. You'll be fine.
Exactly. That's what I mean. So I don't know about that, but then I'm going to go watch the Mariners on Monday before I fly back, and I'm kind of hoping. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but I'm hoping that there's something at stake for the Mariners in that game when I'm over there. That they're still in the race for the wild card. Maybe.
All right. Well, let's see. I know we'll talk before then, but let's make sure we somehow cocktail or meal something.
Yeah,
okay?
Cocktail. Always. I mean, I had one or two too many cocktails on Friday, just gone. So I'm practicing already.
Hey. I was, looking through, that's your Twitter feed and everything you're dealing with a lot of football stuff, soccer stuff over there. And there's not a lot of Seahawks stuff, because it's kind of downtime right now. And then and I saw this video, and this is why I reached out to you, because I saw this exact video. And I was just saying earlier, I didn't know if it was like real. Well, I knew it was real, but then I'm like, was it recent, or is it one of these things like on social media where it's like from a few years ago or something? And then you wrote about Geno Smith. He's at a 7-on-7 camp. That's what it turns out to mean. I guess he's coaching one of these teams, and he's just obnoxious. He's going after somebody on the sideline, and he's doing the thing that is the most narcissistic and arrogant thing you do. Basically bragging about how much money he has. And then you wrote about how I'm just so glad we don't have a quarterback that's on social media now. And Sam Darnold apparently is not. At least we don't think he's on it. He could be some alias. But you wrote about Geno Smith, and you and I, we've discussed Geno a lot over the years. And I guess it's a bigger topic, not so much Geno Smith, Rob. And I'm curious about what it's like over there for athletes in Europe and London and all that. The presence on social media. And then wanting to be so active on it, and especially like Geno Smith is. Very active on it, gets very defensive on it, and as you wrote, and I agree with you, especially his tenure here, spends way too much time going back and forth with fans.
Well, he does. I didn't enjoy his online presence when he was the Seahawks quarterback, and often would share DMs with friends and other people in the media, collectively rolling our eyes at the latest Geno Smith, either sort of subtweeting something or hinting at something in an overly dramatic way, which then leads to everybody speculating as to what he's talking about, or just having a go at a fan or something that he'd seen that he wasn't happy with, or he just kind of felt a little bit like, have you not got anything better to do? And I know I speak as somebody who argues regularly on social media, and people may say, well, what a huge hypocrite you are. But the point is that I kind of have to be on Twitter and X because the journalism job requires you to be on that app constantly, all of the time. It's basically an app for journalists and for people who want to consume sports news, politics news, or whatever. That's where you kind of have to be now. So I don't have any choice. But I can tell you now, if I was an NFL quarterback who had got the bank balance that he was so vociferously telling everybody he has, there's no way that I'd be on there arguing with fans. And one fan with about 90 followers who is a Seahawks fan said he needs to check his ego. And it wasn't the only criticism in the replies to Geno Smith. And he decides, I'm going to single this guy out. And that he's going to make a point of quote tweeting it so that all of his 150,000 followers can see this. And that just can create a pile-on. And I think you have to be careful as professional athletes because you don't know what that person's life is like, and that could have a really damaging effect on that person. And for what? So that Geno Smith can have his say on social media. As it happens, Puck, he deleted that tweet the next day, probably because someone either told him to or because he decided it wasn't a good look. But this is what I mean. I have to say, stuff like this makes me dislike Geno Smith. And there were times during his Seahawks stint where he would do stuff like this. And I just thought, do you know what? I don't know if I like this guy or not. I don't know if I'm not sure he's for me. And whenever he's playing for the Seahawks, you want him to do well. You want him to succeed. I'm not disappointed that he's playing for the Raiders now. And when I had a look on Twitter to see if Sam Darnold had an account and found that he didn't, that was almost too perfect for me.
It's you mentioned the criticism of someone saying, "Well, you're on social media all the time," and well, yeah, but it is based because of work and what we have to do, and it's a way to follow things and gather news. I mean, I use it just to gather news, and that's my main thing, and then and promote shows and all that kind of stuff. I very rarely go back and forth because you're never I learned this a long time ago. You're never going to win anything on this platform. You're just not. It's never going to happen. Someone's going to put their feet in and plant them, and they are not moving off of that. And that's the thing is, no one's saying that like an athlete like Geno Smith can't be on it, but it's the going back and forth, and it's just not healthy. Not healthy for him to spend, or any athlete to spend that much time on something like that. And I wonder, if that part of that, I know you detailed in your story and about what Brady Henderson had wrote at ESPN.com that, did it start to affect, I guess, maybe behind the scenes and questions about maybe his leadership at that organization?
I think there is something to that. And I think the team possibly, not directly with this. I mean, not the sort of stomping down a sideline, yelling at somebody, that's why they paid me the big bucks. I mean, congratulations, Geno. If he'd said that over here, by the way, someone, as I said in the piece, would have told him to take a running jump. I mean, you don't get away with that in England, stomping around telling people how much it doesn't matter who you are. Like the biggest soccer player in England could stomp around telling like that. No one would accept that. No one would be saying, you tell them or anything like this. No, you just don't do that. And that's why I found it really cringy. But I think that kind of side to his personality probably did act as a bit of a turn-off. And look, Brady's talked a bit about that and on Seattle Sports and has discussed things. I think it's pretty much common knowledge at this point that DK Metcalf did not see eye to eye with Geno Smith. And that was something I wrote about when all that stuff was going on, the trades and stuff. And I think at times Geno Smith did a very good job coming out after a game, standing at the podium, showing accountability, taking the blame. But then perhaps he'd go into the locker room after and he would, call out teammates, and he would be quite pointed in his criticism sometimes. And I just think it's not to say that Geno Smith is a bad person. I'm not going to suggest that, because I don't know Geno Smith. I've not been around Geno Smith. But there are just certain things that for me were, just a bit of a turn off. And I thought that sort of episode on social media and the calling out of that Seahawks fan, I did find a bit unappetizing.
And not just one incident with him. And I mean, it's not the Seahawks problem anymore. It's another organization's problem. But I just think it's something that has always, it went from, I'll say this about Geno Smith and any athlete, when he did the interview on the field after the Broncos win, was that when he uttered they wrote me off and I didn't write back?
Yeah,
that was a great moment. It was a great moment for a guy in his position in the career that he had to take a victory lap, because he deserved it. And I do think like he should be held up to a lot of people, like kids and things, of like, never give up on your dream and keep battling and keep going, and you never know when your opportunity is going to come. And but his role of how he gets so enamored with social media, it reminds me he's not on this level at all of a player, and it's a completely different sport. But it's like Kevin Durant in basketball. It's just, I mean, it's way too much time on there. Like, it's just get away from it. He spends so much time on it. He does burner accounts, like multiple burner accounts, so he can follow different reporters and people, and then keeps going in, after them. And it just, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of wasteful energy. And I hope Sam Darnold doesn't have some like burner account, like, I don't know what it is,
well,
redhead QB, at redhead QB or something like that. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't have one, but
you're absolutely right to point out, though, that he is somebody who should be sort of looked at as a role model. I mean, this is an individual who, I'm just looking through his contracts before he had the first deal in Seattle that was significant. So, he was on it was an $800,000 when he first came to Seattle, having had $1 million contract at the Chargers. And then it was 1.2 million for Seattle a couple of years. Then he signed as a free agent for 1 year, 3.5 million. And then he ends up getting 40 million guaranteed. And now he's gone to the Raiders and he's got $58.5 million guaranteed. The guy has turned his life around. I mean, he has got generational wealth now. Yeah. A lot of players who are like Geno Smith just fall out of the league and don't do what he's done. So that's taken some spuds for him to get to that level, and that warrants a lot of respect. Some people think he is a top 10 quarterback. I'm not sure I agree with that, but there are people out there who know what they're talking about who feel that way, and I think he does deserve some respect for that. I'm just with you. Same with Kevin Durant. I think when you've got FU money, I wouldn't have an account. Like I'd have better things to do with my life than spend any time. Like I have my phone glued to me all of the time, and frankly, if I'd have achieved, do you know what I'd be doing? I'd be playing golf every day, or I'd be, I'd buy a team, or I'd be going and, I'd have a yacht, or I don't know what I would do, but because I don't have FU money, but I would not be on Twitter.
I'm with you. I mean, that leads us into a transition, because now Geno's with the Raiders, and now, and what I want to talk about Sam Darnold. That to me, the Sam Darnold this year is going to be so fascinating, Rob. And I know we probably touched on it. We last checked in right around the draft, and now we got, training camp's going to open up here in about 3 weeks. I'm not going to read into it too much, but I do believe if you have a fear of Sam Darnold, of what version you're going to get of Sam Darnold, that fear, if you had that fear certainly wasn't squashed when it came to minicamp, at least the stuff that was open to the media, because the people that are there are like, and they did it in a delicate way. Well, he made some nice throws, but he also, first 2 passes were picked off. And then I could hear people, well, the defense knows what's coming. Okay, or fine. Like there was kind of some built-in excuse making being made for him. all accounts, he wasn't sharp. Now, again, is he learning a new offense? I mean, it's probably not a completely new offense by a lot of the same things that he did, but there probably is some new language and all that. But I'm just bringing it up because I know there's a segment of people that just feel like what they got at the last few games of the season is the version they're going to get. And even the version of the guy that was Sam Darnold in the beginning of his career, not the 14 unbelievable game stretch that he had, to start the season with the Vikings. And that's going to be fascinating to watch. Like, where's it going to be? Probably somewhere in the middle, but which way does it lean more than the other?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this. I've seen a lot of the media comments on that, and I've talked to one or two people about it. I think there may be a few things in play. I do wonder a little bit whether, we've got to remember here that Geno Smith was an excellent physical specimen, a fantastic arm, and is the kind of player with the physical talent to really shine in these mini camps and training camps. And he followed Russell Wilson, who also had a tremendous arm. And you do wonder a little bit sometimes whether a media that has got accustomed to seeing players with that physical ability, maybe then look at someone like Sam Darnold and think he's not as good, and then you've immediately is knocked for that. But I've not seen those mini camps, so maybe it was worse than that. Maybe I'm doing the people who are commenting a disservice by suggesting it's a comparison to what's come before Sam Darnold, and maybe he did just look really bad. I think then the other thing that I would suggest, and this is, I don't know if this is hoping for a best or hopium or whatever, but the Shanahan system, which it appears the Seahawks are going to go towards, has been able to get the best out of what I would say are perhaps limited physical quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy's a better athlete than I think any of us thought coming into the league, but that's mainly scrambling around, not an arm. And those players have been able to have a degree of success in the system because the system works. And with Sam Darnold, he has got some physical tools, but I think my sort of hope and expectation for him is just that he can do what he's asked to do, keep things on time, and that everyone hates using the word game manager, but really, if that's what he is next year, I think that's fine, because I think a lot more of this is going to be about the running game and the offensive line and how they play. And if they can get that going, and if Darnold can play off that, I don't think he needs to be I don't think he has to win games with his arm as much as maybe Geno Smith did and Russell Wilson did. So that's kind of the angle I'm taking. But undoubtedly, there will be all eyes on Darnold at the start of this year.
Of course.
And it's going to be a challenge for him, because if he doesn't start well, it's not so much that Drew Lock's there, but people will immediately look towards Jalen Milroe.
Of course.
And I think people who are probably connected to Seattle, or the people who are covering the team a bit closer, probably would temper that. But you know what fans are like, Puck. He's a third-round pick. He's exciting. And if Darnold ain't doing it, they're going to ask for him.
I think we discussed this. I think we talked about this right after the draft. And you know this as well as anyone. The second in a training or in a preseason game that Milroe takes off and displays that just unbelievable running and playmaking ability, and then in that same game makes a play where he gets out of a sack and makes a great throw because he's got a big time arm, people are just they're gonna start drooling, and they're not gonna be able to contain themselves. And if it's in that same game where Darnold doesn't look great, but maybe he's not awful, but just kind of looks, game manager like, people are they're gonna start carrying that flag. Now, I don't think it's similar at all to what it was like with Wilson and Flynn, because I think when Wilson came out, it was such a better finished product for Russell Wilson, despite the size and all that. But for Milroe, and then Flynn, there's a bigger investment in Darnold than there was for Matt Flynn. But at that time there probably was considered a good investment there for Matt Flynn. But I don't see that happening, but that doesn't mean that fans won't want to see it happen.
Do you know what I think is encouraging for me, more so than anything Sam Darnold did at his best last year? Because he was playing with the Vikings. O'Connell's obviously an exceptional head coach. offensive-minded head coach anyway. And he got Justin Jefferson to throw to, and then TJ Hawkinson came back, and he's got some other weapons there. So it's a good situation for any quarterback to be in. I think if we're going to try and look at a positive for Sam Darnold, it's the 2022 season when he was with Carolina. Carolina did not have the weapons. Carolina did not have an offensive-minded head coach. They had a defensive-minded head coach. And in the 5 games that he started originally, which included, by the way, a win in Seattle against the Seahawks, he had in 5 games 7 touchdowns and 1 interception, and managed the game very, very well. Now, nobody was watching him and going, wow, what an incredible quarterback who's leading the Panthers, because if they did, he wouldn't have gone to be the backup for the 49ers the year after. He would have got a starting job. He was the facilitator. And what was actually driving the Panthers on during that epic run was the fact they were running for 200 yards a game. And he was just sort of playing off that. And the Panthers defense was fierce and was playing very, very well. And I think that's the model that the Seahawks are going to look for. I went back and watched some of those Panthers games when they signed him to see him outside of the O'Connell system, and was more impressed with the Panthers as a whole rather than necessarily the quarterback. I think if we watch that Panthers team in 2022 at the end of the season, that's going to be the blueprint for what the Seahawks want to play like, that physical style. Darnold produced results without being spectacular in that kind of an arrangement. And I think that's what they're going to be going for.
Yep. And I think really Seattle set themselves up in some, best case scenarios. If it ultimately doesn't work out with Sam Darnold, you can get out. You didn't spend much money at all. And then, the other side of it is if Milroe works, not this year, like in maybe a year from now, gets a little taste of it, but in a year from now, 2 years from now, he's a starting quarterback in the league, and you got him, where they give him third round?
Third round, late third.
Okay. Just unbelievable. It's a great hit. It's you if he figures it out and is able to, everyone has noted his work ethic. They've talked about it. He's in there early, staying, studying, soaking it all in. Then they found themselves a real gem. Here's the one thing that I'm going to be intrigued to watch and just kind of see it develop when training camps gets underway here in a couple of weeks, is the wide receiver room. Because this reminds me of the Mariners. There's a lot of what ifs, in this group. Both DK and obviously Tyler had down years. Each didn't get over 1,000. DK ended up with 66 and 992 and 5 touchdowns. Lockett was 49, 600. But you're replacing with Marquez, Valdez Scantling, and then Cooper Kupp. Here's the concern. One, Valdez Scantling, his best season was 3 years ago. And that best season was 42 catches for 687 yards. He's bounced around a bunch of different teams, and I don't know. To me, he's just a guy. And then Cooper Kupp, we all love Cooper Kupp. But we love Cooper Kupp because, in 2021, he's the best wide receiver in the league. He's putting up just unbelievable numbers. Past 3 seasons, he's missed 18 games because of injuries. There's a lot of what ifs and unknowns with this group. And then, of course, JSN, who's coming off his second year and was great. But other than that, I mean, either these guys all hit and it's great, or this could be a real problem in that room this year.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting situation to watch play out. I also think they're going to be a very different team. As I keep saying, I think the running game is going to be so important. And really, for me, you could probably run through any of those receivers and include the tight ends. I think the success and failure of the offense is going to come down to whether this offensive line can get better coaching, and with the arrival of Gray Zabel and maybe one or two of these other rookies can get into the competition as well. Maybe they can improve up front. And then can Ken Walker have a breakout year? Or is Zach Charbonnet going to take this job and just run with it as he was threatening to do at times last season? That for me is going to determine everything. And then if that happens, and if you can run the ball very, very well, then I would expect that it's going to be a lot easier to make the most of Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp. And then, the one thing from the Shanahan system is that they have always had a very productive tight end. And, the player that I compared Elijah Arroyo to before the draft, this is not after the fact, was that I see a bit of George Kittle in him, not as a blocker yet, but as a pass catcher. He reminds me of that player that he's inevitable, that he's going to get the ball and there's nothing you can do about it on third down. And that's, when we've faced Kittle in Seattle over the years, that has felt a bit of that. And AJ Barner was a productive pass catcher as a rookie, did better than I think anybody expected as a pass catcher. Noah Fant is still here. So I just think the makeup of the offense is different. That said, it is a league where, some people believe that you're only as good as your third receiver. And I think Seattle have got two good ones, provided Cooper Kupp can stay healthy. The third one is the question mark. As you mentioned there, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a journeyman. He made some big plays for the Saints and for this offensive coordinator last year, but he seems more of a splash player rather than a consistent player. And then you're sort of looking at some of these rookies, can Torrey Horton, what's his injury status? Can he come? I love Torrey Horton as a player and graded him very highly, but is he going to be healthy enough to come in and be a legit wide receiver 3 as a rookie? Is Ricky White capable of doing that? Is a Cody White or somebody going to emerge to take that job? Is there anybody out there who can be added to this roster between now and the start of the season to come and do that? It's a difficult one, though, because receiver is just one of those positions that has just become so expensive. I do think you have to draft and develop players now at receiver. And we have seen great value found at receiver in the later rounds in recent times. Puka Nacua, the best example of that. Torrey Horton could be that kind of a player. But until you find that player, you do just wonder if the one's short.
All right, my friend, it was great to catch up with you. I want you to enjoy the rest of your summer. Safe travels to wherever you're going this summer. I do want to remind you, though, that take a little – I want you to pour yourself a drink on Friday, okay? Okay, and just remember, July 4th and what we did. And what we decided to do.
Friday, is it?
Now, listen. Now, it really technically is today, by the way. Today is really when we voted for our independence, July 2nd. It just went into act on July 4th. But thank you to the heroes like Thomas Jefferson and others. We decided to pull ourselves out underneath your monarchy and your pressing thumb on us. And we started a great country. So you really should be thanking us, and I want to thank you for your role in us becoming this great nation that we are.
And you have added insult to injury ever since by refusing to properly pronounce the word aluminium.
Yes, sir. Rob, you're the best. I look forward to again our chats there in the fall talking Seahawks football. I encourage everyone to go read. And follow Rob, please, at Rob Staton on social media. Rob Staton Football there on YouTube. Please go read his work there at SeahawksDraftBlog.com. He is just he's the best in the business at doing it. Such passion for it. Loves doing it. He fits it in with all of his other duties that he does as well over there. Love it, Rob. And we'll talk to you down the road. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Puck. See you soon.
Yep, there he is, Rob Staton, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Again, follow him at Rob Staton Football there on YouTube as